Live right about now. Aye, we're live. Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming in. Hope you're all doing safe and well. So welcome to our Haunted City live. I'll get Sarah and Craig on the panel, and just before I come to a guest, I'll just give you a wee rough background to what tonight's live's about. I done a post last week about history, basically, and the amount of channels out there that just talk gibberish. They'll read one website, think it's true, and whatever they don't know, they'll do a show and they'll make half-hour show and they'll just make up the rest. And it's happening too much, and it's insulting. It's insulting to history itself, to the people that they're talking about. It's insulting to their audience and the whole historical community, really. So there was one show particularly covered Edinburgh. And I'd say 95% it was crap, basically. Just my opinion. But they try to be experts. So tonight we have got an expert for you. We've got a gentleman who for the last 15 years has basically lived and breathed Edinburgh. And what this guy doesn't know probably hasn't been written or found out yet. He's made his living out it, and he runs City of the Dead Tours, which is based in Greyfriars Kirkyard. And he's a good friend there, so we want to welcome along Jamie Corstorphine. Good evening. Been a while. I'd say it's been a while. I know we saw you on Saturday, but it's been a while since we had you on the show.
Indeed.
So thanks very much for coming along, Jamie. I know tonight we're going to set the record straight on a few things, shall we say?
Absolutely.
I think we all saw the show that I was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sit here and start, slating people personally about things, but it's a general conception I found with a lot of these things that go out, and it just breeds more and more falseness, and stories end up getting legs and wings and, 4 heads, and it's, I know some people want to hear, the glorified, dramatization of something, but there's a fine line between dramatization and the truth, and the truth seems to get lost with downright pretty much lies and made up stuff, which is, there's a certain element of kind of artistic license sometimes, but some of the stuff that is going about online and other things, especially about specialist subjects, it does. It's a lot of it is just ridiculous, and unfortunately, some people take this to be the utter truth, and they take it that these people are telling the truth, and most of the time they're not,
Well, that's it, exactly. I mean, as I said in the post last week, we're no experts by far, but we are lucky to have some good researchers who research various stories, websites included, but they'll research all different sources, compare stories, and try and give as an accurate account as possible. But sometimes we do get it wrong. We're only doing sometimes dates or names, whatever gets mixed up, and we do kind of maybe get the odd true mistake. But to me, if you're going to do anything to do with history, research it, know what you're talking about, or have a really good idea what you're talking about before you come on and start ribbling, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even my specialist area is obviously Greyfriars and the Southbridge Vaults. That's what I've been researching, constantly pretty much for the last 15 years. So that is my area of expertise. But if somebody was to ask me, when did James IV, live at Holyrood, that's not my area, but I can certainly find out. But I wouldn't start, look at one website quickly and go, oh, okay, so this website says, it was 1517, okay, 15, just say, look, I don't really know much about that, so I can't really say, but don't pass it off as fact when you don't actually know.
That's it. It doesn't make you look bad. We've been asked stuff, and people have asked us things in chat on previous shows, and we'll turn around and say, look, we don't know.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. We could sit there and give them a big cock and bull story. You know, there's a load of bull basically, but that's just not the way to do it. It's not right.
No. That's why, again, over the years that I have been asked, to do stuff with Sony, with Paramount TV, Discovery Channel, Really TV, while I was working with Yvette and Carl, and Gail Porter, for Spook Scotland, because they know I know what I'm talking about with these areas, and my reputation for that, I don't go out looking for these jobs. These people approach me to get me into their shows or being an advisor, like the BBC stuff that I'm doing with the BBC and everything like that. They approach me and ask my expert opinion because I'm known and I'm renowned now to know what I'm talking about. You don't get that from making stuff up and just passing off somebody else's bullshit as fact.
Aye. I mean, we always. I mean, I'm not buttering you up or nothing like that. I've just been honest with you during the show a few times, and obviously we've spent a lot of time together, Greyfriars and the Vaults and what have you. So, I mean, we've learned loads from you that we never knew before, and obviously we've done research, blah blah blah. But the amount of stuff, and as when you sit and listen to you talk, as in previous shows, you can tell that you know what you're talking about. You get these people that they'll talk about a subject and they're kind of stuttering or pausing but then you get somebody who's on who gives you the facts, gives you the dates, just like that, and they're on spot, like like yourself. So George Mackenzie, he was one of the subjects.
He was indeed. Obviously working in Greyfriars. There's a lot of stuff I hear every single day from, various tour groups and other people, giving out their version of Mackenzie, and you can tell that they've looked online because anybody who's actually done proper research into the man would know exactly what this man was like.
Mm-hmm.
He was a highly intelligent individual, highly intelligent. There wasn't a murderous bone in his body. He worked his entire life in law to get to where he was. He made the laws in Scotland. He was one under the king. His word went. He was a judge. First of all, he was a lawyer. He was KC, King's Counsel. Through all that, but then he went to advocate, and then he became Lord Advocate. He was a very intelligent man and very statuous man. That was his job as a judge, was to pass sentence, as judges do today, pass sentence on those who were found guilty of a crime. That was it. If they were not found not guilty, then of course they were, carried on their way. They're found guilty though. There was set, there's set punishments for certain crimes, and of course the crime for high treason was hung, drawn, and quartered. That was the standard punishment. Whoever you were, wherever it was in Scotland or indeed England, high treason was hung, drawn, and quartered. It wasn't torturous. Well, it was torturous, let's face it. They cut your insides out before, while you were still alive. But that was the punishment. It wasn't out of the ordinary. So, this whole, he went around tortured people and stuff. He done his job. He sentenced people to death because it was his job to do that. And at that time, again, when you research somebody, you can't look at it through today's eyes. Well, that was awful. That was horrible. That was disgusting. That was torture. We're talking about the 1600s. You have to also research the surrounding time. Everything around that period.
Mm-hmm.
The social standings, the people of the time, the laws of the time, which were very, very different than what they are now. And just the whole demeanor about that time, that period. So it's not just, you don't just look at one person, you're looking at the whole surroundings. Then you can start understanding the decisions that were made, why he did what he did, which was basically his job. If he was to show any leniency towards anybody, whether he agreed with it or not, if he showed any leniency or mercy and he didn't pass the sentence of death on these Covenanters in the eyes of the law, that's what they were. He would be on the gallows next. You were with the king or against the king. And he sure as hell wasn't about to, lose his head and his job. Because, he did. I mean, he later went on to defend Covenanters in his life. you know, after Presbyterianism became, you know, you know, they pretty much handed it after 50 years of killing. So he then went on, because it was his job, he went on as KC to then defend Covenanters. You know, it's so this whole bloody Mackenzie, this only came about because of the romanticism of the later, you know, like Walter Scott novels and stuff. Everybody likes a baddie. And unfortunately, because George Mackenzie, you know, was Lord Advocate at the time, you know, he was seen obviously the baddie because it's a statute as a judge, you know. Any criminal will tell you when they've had a run-in with a judge, bastard, arsehole.
Oh, I know
because he was doing his job. Like, you know, that it was no different. And you know, some of the stuff you hear though, especially in Greyfriars, you know, you've really got to bite your tongue when they're telling you how he was murdering and torturing children, and you know, the prisoners that were brought into the Covenanters prison area of Greyfriars came from a battlefield. The Covenanters lost the Battle of Bothwell Brig, 1679. 1,200 Covenanters were marched from the battlefield directly to the Covenanters prison to be held until further notice. The only connection George Mackenzie has to that prison area, or when it was a prison, was he signed the paperwork. Being Lord Advocate, they needed permission to keep the prisoners there. So he wrote and basically gave them permission, the local authorities and his government troops, to basically use it as a makeshift prison. And it was his signature on it. That was it. He never visited the prison. He certainly didn't come down and start torturing people and, you know, pull an 8-hour shift on a Sunday. I've got nothing better to do. The wife's out. I'm just going to go down to the prison and just, you know, murder a few people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they would have you believe this. You know, he never killed a single person with his own hands, ever. You know, he wasn't out on the battlefield. He wasn't roaming the streets. He was Lord Advocate. You know, but people, they don't, you know, don't let that get in the way of a great story of how he was a murderous, tyrannous, misogynist. You know, again, misogyny, how he hates females, he hates women. No, he doesn't. You know, he was one of the reasons witch trials were abolished in Scotland. If he hated women, why didn't he just let them burn? Yeah, they're all witches. Yeah, go for it. He was the reason that they were abolished. He stood up for women. Again, people read websites, they read about this horrible man, George Mackenzie, and suddenly it's the truth. And it's ridiculous. You know, if you're going to pass off something and say something on, put it out to the public in any way, shape, or form, do your fucking research. It's not difficult. There is plenty of information on the real George Mackenzie. One being a book you can still get. I mean, this is an original one. This is early 1900s. This is the only book you will ever need to buy to find out the truth about George Mackenzie. You could probably get it on Google Books. If you look, there are still copies out there. You get it on eBay. It's not cheap. I think this one was about £300. But you can probably get a digital copy, possibly. This is the book here. This is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
You read that, all right?
Aye. So you can still get
public domain. Yep. You'll be able to get it on, you know, even second hand or third hand, whatever. Maybe find it at a car boot sale. That there is more information than you will ever find on any web page about the real George Mackenzie. And this is what people should be taking as the truth, not some random website that calls him bloody Mackenzie. He was a murderous, treacherous, you know, just enough's enough. You know, he was a highly respected, highly intelligent judge, and that should always be remembered.
The Covenanters prison is obviously, you know, adjacent to part of Greyfriars, and you know, we've been lucky enough to be there quite a few times. But a lot of people, the Black Mausoleum, this was one of the other things that was mentioned. You know, the Black Mausoleum and it being George Mackenzie. Obviously, anybody who reads up will know the history of the Covenanters prison. It's now locked. I think it was 1999. The council says, you know, enough's enough with everything that's been happening there. And a lot of people are saying, well, it's George Mackenzie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that again, yeah. I mean, that comes from basically speculation. To go back to the start, the area that is now known as the Covenanters prison, that used to be open to the public, you know, pre-1999. You could wander around. So the story about the homeless man who broke into the Mackenzie. Now, let's just make this absolutely 100% clear from the start. The Mackenzie Mausoleum and the Black Mausoleum are two very different locations. Now, this is a daily battle in my life. Obviously, we City of the Dead tours, we are the company, the owner of the company, Jan Andrew Henderson, who wrote the story, well, not the story, but the book, The Ghost That Haunted Itself. That was the first place that somebody called it the Mackenzie Poltergeist. Jan named it the Mackenzie Poltergeist. Now, the Mackenzie Poltergeist, at the very, very start, from the people who brought it to the public, it was called the Mackenzie Poltergeist after the mausoleum, not after any Mackenzie in particular. There is 12 Mackenzies in that mausoleum, not just one. So over time, though, people have speculated it because, you know, the bloody Mackenzie, it must be him. We have never once said it's anything to do with George Mackenzie. That is purely people just making it up and thinking, oh, it must be him because of his bloody past. No, it was just because after the Mackenzie Mausoleum in 1999 was broken into by a homeless man, that's true, and the coffin was disturbed. You know, so that seems to be a pivotal moment of the Mackenzie haunting in the prison area. Something triggered something in the prison area. What that connection is, we have no idea. We have never known. We have never speculated against it. We don't know. That Mackenzie Mausoleum being broken into by the homeless guy, that seems to have started because it was literally about a week later. That was when strange occurrences started to be reported in the prison area around one mausoleum halfway down on the left-hand side. That was the mausoleum that Jan called the Black Mausoleum for the book. So again, though, people see Mackenzie's burial mausoleum as black, and it's a mausoleum, which is very correct. So that's then when they call it the Black Mausoleum. Nobody has ever had access to Mackenzie's mausoleum, certainly not for a tour. How these people over the years could have been attacked in the, you know, it's just people making it up. Also, other tour groups who don't have access to the Black Mausoleum in the prison, because we still have the only access to the prison area and the Black Mausoleum because we've been documenting the case from 1999. They don't have access to it, so they'll tell you outside Mackenzie's mausoleum, this is the haunted Black Mausoleum. This is where all the attacks happen on. Utter garbage. So then other people see that and they tell them, oh, that's the Black. No, it's not. You know, it's just, out of all the documentaries, you know, well, other ones that I've done, not including myself, but tour groups and, you know, all these blogs, all these websites, all these lives, they all talk about the Mackenzie Poltergeist and, you know, how not one of them have actually contacted us, the company that have all the documentation, all the photos, all the information on it. You know, this is what we have been doing every day since 1999, is documenting this thing that we called the Mackenzie Poltergeist. So if anybody knows the truth about it, it's us. Yet nobody. We will help anybody that gets hold of us to ask us about the Mackenzie Poltergeist, because we would rather people got the truth instead of listening to websites. But they don't even bother. They don't even do basic research to find out the origins of it and how it first was reported. I mean, you can find that out from any national newspaper. Newspaper archives are one of the best sources of information to start your search. Then from there you go, and you go on from there into archives or, you know, things like that. But not one of them. Then they go out, do a live or whatever, put it on a website, the same regurgitated bullshit, you know, and it really does irk me. It gets to a certain point where it really does irritate me greatly.
I mean, that's understandable because, it's your life, it's your passion. And to watch these people time after time start belting on and you're sitting there, listening, watching, whatever, and it's, that's crap.
Yeah.
That's crap, And I mean, even that show, which I'm not going to mention, that annoyed me. So, I can only maybe try and imagine how you feel listening to the into numerous things. I mean, I do have a theory about the attacks in the Covenanters prison and the connection to Mackenzie's tomb. I'm going to quickly run it by you, I know what was your time, but I'm going to. My theory is that it's one of the guards, one of the old guards there. He still sees that area as his. So anybody that comes in there is an intruder, basically. The connection to Mackenzie's tomb is, as far as, obviously we've done investigations that, we think Spirit is aware of what's going on round about them. So to me, Mackenzie would have been like his boss. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be totally way out here. And so, this guy would know that
he was Lord Advocate. So in effect, yeah, he kind of was, because he was basically higher than the city guard. He was higher than the sort of army, So he kind of was the boss because he was in charge of the country when Charles wasn't here. He was to uphold Charles's laws.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of was, the buck kind of fell at Mackenzie. Of course, he knew what was going on, from the people on the ground. If you look at him like an army general, the army generals don't go out to battle. They're in offices and they're running the show from an office. It's exactly what he done. He knew what was going on in the street. Of course he was. He knew what was happening by Montrose and things like that. Did he stop it? No, because his ultimate goal was to follow the king's orders, and that was to eradicate these Covenanters, or to make them recognize him as the head of the church. That was the goal, So he kind of was their boss, I suppose, because he, if they showed any mercy to them, then they would be pulled up in front of him, probably. I mean, there wasn't just George Mackenzie sentencing these Covenanters. He wasn't in court 24/7. There was other judges as well, all doing exactly the same as he was. It's just because he was the most well-known and the highest one, of course they're going to pick somebody out, So he kind of was. So yeah, I mean that theory does work as well. It could be that, or it could be somebody who was there, being held. But again, I mean, the Covenanters' prison, they could leave at any time if they just recognised Charles as the head of the church. That's all they needed to do, So
they were talking about
they could walk out. Yeah, it wasn't like a strict sentence that they had to be there for a set amount of time. They could leave at any time, But they were already willing to die for the cause on a battlefield. So, a lot of them were not about to turn around and go, actually, I've had time to think about it now, Yeah, okay, sorry, Charles. God save the king.
It was quite common. Religion was it still is a big thing, but back then it was people's lives. It was a season Saturday, jumping to Henry VIII's times as well. It was the same kind of scenario when he wanted everybody to sign the oath recognising him as the head of Church of England. And one of his closest friends and advisors for many years was Thomas More. Yeah, and he had them locked up in the tower.
He was a man of the church as well. Yeah.
And his family begged him, look, just sign the oath. You don't need to agree with it. But he stood fast in his beliefs, and he was beheaded for it. And this was a guy that had known Henry since he was a kid, basically.
He was burnt at the stake, was he not?
No, I think he was beheaded. You can check that out, because usually it was head that were burned.
I think he was burnt as a heretic. I think he was, I think he was burnt as a heretic, possibly. I could be wrong. I'll often I say that.
See, sometimes I do make mistakes.
So do I, so I could be 100%. Go on, Google it.
I'll Google it after the...
He was hung, drawn and quartered. He had his bits chopped off and everything,
In Tudor times, the penalty for treason was high treason was hung, drawn and quartered, If you're wrong, Jamie, that's what you'll be sentenced to, by the way.
I'm sure he was burnt. Or maybe I just got that from the Tudors TV show, possibly.
I think he lost weight in the head area, possibly. So before we move on to another location, one question: you've been Grey Friars for 15 years now, practically 7 days a week, and you've been there at all times of the day and night. I know it used to be investigated quite a bit, and people kept saying, "Oh, George Mackenzie's here. We picked up George Mackenzie. George Mackenzie's my friend, comes to visit me, blah, blah, blah." Do you think, in your opinion, and we'll take this as gold, he's still hanging about?
Nah.
You ever experienced anything in the yard
Nah.
that, you know, couldn't explain?
Nah. I mean, a lot of the groups that used to come in when obviously investigations were allowed in Greyfriars, but I mean, we're talking years and years ago now. I mean, 2007 they were banned. After one of the last Ghost Fests that happened, that's when the council shut it down completely, and there was a lot of vandalism done and antisocial behaviour from certain groups that caused this. A lot of people, obviously, I mean, if you believe that it's George Mackenzie, then of course anything you get is going to be George Mackenzie. You know, we've had obviously mediums with the name George coming out, or spirit boxes with George coming out, you know, because that's what they want to hear. You know, so nah, I don't think it's anything to do with George Mackenzie. No.
I see.
I mean, I've obviously got my own beliefs behind that, yeah, can't go into that too much actually, but yeah, no, I don't think it's anything to do with George Mackenzie. No.
I'm actually just googling Thomas More. I'm listening to you, but I'm googling Thomas More now because I know it will. It's going to annoy me. Execution.
I just keep sort of like thinking, Jamie, back to what I think you said on Saturday, was just the fact that, you know, with the prison and everything like that, and him supposed to be haunting it and attacking people. I think you said on Saturday that, you know, he wasn't liked in that prison. He had like 1,200 people in there that were kind of in there, more or less kind of because of him. So why would he haunt a place where he was universally disliked? You know, why would he go to that place? Why would he?
He didn't go around attacking people, you know, when he was alive. So how could he be bothered when he's, you know, again, he wouldn't associate with, you know, people in the street. He didn't associate with normal people. He was a lord, you know, and they've got their own circles of friends. He was a top government, you know, just like any high position at that time. He was not part of the royal family, but he was 100%. So he didn't socialise with the guards. He didn't socialise with the people on the street. The only ones he did would be the, you know, the head guards, like, you know, like Montrose and things like that, you know. So, but again, it would be done through letters. It wouldn't be done hardly face to face, because when he wasn't in Edinburgh, he was down in London, back and forward. And again, if he wasn't doing that, he was in court doing his job, you know. So he wouldn't be hanging about afterwards. No, it's not like a massive lock-in for him. No, he wouldn't associate with us.
I'm afraid, Jamie, you're fully off, because it was originally sentenced to be hung, drawn, and quartered, but Henry commuted the sentence to beheading.
So it was quick. Oh well, that's fine.
So
wicked. So you were right. Nice. Well done.
I love it when I'm right. It's like, you know, it must be a guy thing, you know, when
that's not what I read.
You know, it's wrong, and you still remember it 6 months down the line, you know. I remember back in June when I was correct about something once, you know. It's like
my wife would be able to tell me. She's specialised in the Tudors. She loves the Tudor period, from Henry VII onwards. She loves it. She'd be able to rattle it off, no problem at all. She'd be able to give you the date he was executed as well, no problem at all. But
we have always been fascinated with the Tudors since day one. It's something we've always been quite, between the Tudors and Edinburgh, it's the two things. We kind of started out in Edinburgh, you know, our first wee lives and what have you on the mile. So moving along, I'm trying to cover the bits and pieces. The Vaults. We were there on Saturday, and also it was a great day. Always is. You more or less run the Vaults.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, is there an air shaft in the Vaults?
There's air shafts, but none that are 400 feet deep. No, or 40 feet deep. The air shafts are mainly in the roof and the walls at the top, but they are like chimneys. They're small. There's also coal drops that also get air shafts, but no, there's no massive shafts.
Because there was a photograph shown, and we know the area, you know, because obviously we've been there. We've got photographs of the area, but I'd rather it came from for yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. That photograph that was shown was actually taken in South Nidri Street vaults. It's basically the second level corridor. It is a corridor. It's straight. It's not accessible to the public because it's above the ramp where the public walk, but it's just above your head. It's the second level that's no longer accessible. It's a corridor with doors coming off of it. So I've no idea where the air shaft came from. That's certainly not what an air shaft in the vaults looks like.
As soon as we seen the photograph, obviously we'd been in the vaults before, last year as well. As soon as we seen the photo, I just want to make it clear to everybody, this isn't a witch hunt or nothing like that. We just want to set the record straight for a guy that knows. Basically, that's what it is. I know we may get some comments the days to come, or that was just a witch hunt or whatever you want to call it. But it's no. History needs to be respected.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially, I mean, it was just a fine example, and it was, it's the most recent one. But again, this one has brought up, a lot of misinformation that's, that is out there. Some of it is anyway. Some of it I've never heard before, but so yeah, it was just a fine example because it was the most recent one that was flagged up to me. Because I'm flagged up pretty much anything that comes out of Greyfriars. Somebody somewhere tags me in it, just because I'm known to be, that thing, and and usually they know they do it because they will get a reaction from me, and and this was one of these occasions that I took a huge reaction to it, because some of the information was just, for me and what I hear every day, was outlandish at best.
There was something else that was said about, now we actually don't know if this is true or not, so this is where first we finding out. It was said that the kind of upper gentry at that time, when the vaults were in use, they all had keys to the vaults. And if they came out of the pub and they had too much to drink and didn't want to go home, basically, they would just use their key and get and stay in the vaults.
No, that's not true. The vaults originally were obviously built for storage and workshops. Now, these workshops and storages, they were all allocated to businesses on South Bridge. This was what was going to pay for the upkeep of the bridge, was these basically storage and workshop areas. They were extra. They were allocated to the businesses. Most of the businesses wanted them though, because there was no storage. The businesses were only basically within the tenement buildings that's on each side of the bridge. So, there was very little storage space. So it was good for them to take this extra storage on because they needed it. There was a lot of, jeweler on bridge level anyway. There was a lot of jewelers, there was a lot of drapiers, silk merchants, so they needed, and obviously seamstresses, tailors. So they needed, big areas to store stuff. So the bridge trustees of the bridge, they figured, this is how we're going to make money, and this is what's going to pay for the upkeep of the bridge, would be to rent the space out to the businesses to use their allocated storage, and that extra money would pay for the upkeep. It was great, but of course we never waterproofed it, so it leaked. So the businesses quickly abandoned the vaults. Once the businesses had abandoned the vaults, there was a kind of free for all. But even then, they kind of remained empty. Businesses were abandoning the vaults as early as 1792, which is amazing because the last tenement wasn't fully built until 1796. So, they were actually abandoning the vaults before the bridge tenements, were actually finished. The bridge itself, the structure, the 19 arches off South Bridge, the viaduct bridge, that was built between 1785 and 88. But the tenements were then built basically to cover the arches, and that's when Nidri Street, Blair Street, Commercial Court, which is no longer there, that's now the Ibis Hotel, because obviously Commercial Court burnt down in 2002, and of course Nidri Street South. That was when these streets were created by these tenements going up to cover the arches. So the bridge wasn't fully functional ever for its full purpose because they were abandoning the vaults before they'd actually finished the last tenement. So, once they were abandoned, it was kind of free for all, but they remained empty. Nobody wanted to go in, and there was access was still only at that point via the businesses. So you had to go through somebody's shop or through their, staff quarters to get to the vault. So, people that didn't have access to the vault didn't use the vaults at that time. It was only the people who had access to them still until about 1800. But that's when the illegal trades took over. They were pretty much locked off. The businesses had pretty much bricked them up, kind of like the window idea with the window tax. You see buildings with the bricked up windows.
The windows are bricked up.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the window anymore, so you can't charge me tax on it. It's no longer a window. Pretty much what they did with the vaults. A lot of the businesses said, right, well, there it is, it's bricked up. We don't have access to it now, so you can't charge us for them. But there was still access. But the legal trades that came in, the people came, there was illegal taverns, illegal distilleries, anything that was illegal above ground was perfectly legal in the vaults. There was no police force went in there. The city guard didn't go in. So it was a kind of out of sight, out of mind. I mean, the Cowgate at that time as well had already fallen into a kind of slum area. But it really wasn't until sort of 1823, 1824, that was when Edinburgh took the first influx of hundreds of thousands of families from Ireland and the Highlands. And that's when the vaults really became a real free-for-all, where people then started to move into them because they had nowhere else to go. But certainly if people had a choice, they certainly wouldn't be sleeping in there overnight, especially not from higher gentries. Do you really think so? They didn't even want to walk along the Cowgate because it was 3-foot thick animal and human shit. They weren't about to go sleep in a dirty vault, no matter what they were up to in there.
I know.
Plus as well, the upper classes, they all had their private clubs that were already established in the new town. The hellfire clubs and things like that. They already had premises that they would go to, in their proper gentlemen's lounge bars. They wouldn't be found in, this ain't some Jack the Ripper, 1800s London, where there's, the hierarchy are going round and murdering the prostitutes and, the downtrodden. And no, Edinburgh was very, very different.
Not true. Got a couple of other things about thinking about the vaults, and a question. It's actually for us. How many rooms have been discovered so far in the vaults?
It's impossible to tell, really, because a lot of it's obviously been remodeled over the time. There's a lot of false walls went up. There's a lot. Originally, when the bridge first opened, there was just under 6 miles worth of corridors. If you were to lay them, flat, all the corridors in the whole entire structure down both sides, it's impossible to say number-wise, because there's no existing plans left of the bridge now. They were all destroyed or lost. Plus, the plans were changed as they were building it. So, there is no such thing as original plans now. So, it's anywhere between, I would say, but again, there's different sized. You've got different sized vaults. Your workshops at the top level are different to the 2 levels or 3 levels underneath. Look at Banshee Labyrinth. How many separate rooms have they got? How many separate rooms of, Blair Street vaults, Mercat tours? How many, rooms have they got? There's at least, 14, 15 rooms in that alone, in that tiny section. And then over time, the walls have been put up, partitions have been put in. I think originally there was just over, 240 separate chambers, just in one section from the Cowgate up to the Royal Mile, on both sides, Blair Street, Nidri Street, and that's not including Commercial Court and Nidri Street South. So it's impossible to say. Plus as well, you've got 4 levels down the bottom, then 2 levels at the top. And all these were then sectioned off, and yeah. So
it's just massive, really, isn't it? It's just,
huge, absolutely massive.
Spend months documenting or try to draw plans or whatever. Also we investigated the vaults, and we did get some activity and what have you, but that's not what we're here for. And you spend a lot of time doing it yourself, daytime, nighttime. Have you ever heard of the Weeping Man, the spirit of the Weeping Man?
No, obviously there's been a few reports over time from various different people, visitors. Obviously that's, when you open it to the public and, you do tours, obviously there's different people come along and, they sense different things, different people sense things. Certainly, obviously there's the more famous ones in Blair Street, Mercat tours. There's the famous Mr. Boots. He's felt in Blair Street area. You've also got the Watcher, that kind of seems to frequent different areas in the vaults. It's hard to count again how many, spirits or residual energies or, people have sensed over the time. The little boy, it's we've heard obviously the Whispering Lady, which is Catherine. She's been felt in our section, the top level, but it's, yeah, I don't think a weeping, I don't recall. But again, it could well have been, reported before.
I don't know. This seems to be quite a famous story from what we gathered. So I was wanting to check
Yeah,
that.
I'm going to look into that.
But
I haven't heard of it though, but it doesn't mean that somebody's not put it out there, kind of thing. I've certainly not heard about it.
I don't know if Craig or Sarah's got any questions for you about the comments about the vaults before we move on to somewhere else.
I was just kind of like saying, you were saying about the different sizes of the vaults, and most definitely when we were there, there were like absolutely tiny rooms where you could, even if you get 4 people in there, it would be crowded, But personally, the bits like the double, sort of like the double height sort of like chamber where the rock formation coming out and everything like that, it was just
massive.
It's kind of like awe-inspiring. You just go down the staircase and it's just kind of like there. I mean, it's the amount of history, even predating Edinburgh with the volcanic rock.
That's right.
It's just kind of, it's pretty much awe-inspiring. But I remember sort of like going down into, I think it was like a little kind of like cellar or something like that. There was an original battle down there, and it was absolutely tiny, possibly from one of the illegal drinking dens. Like,
distilleries,
I'm not going to say whether or not it was, but I know we got Speg got quite a few really good sort of like things down there, but you're definitely right. I mean, it's the amount of sort of like rooms in there is absolutely just jaw dropping, even in that small bit. It's just. It's like you're surrounded by history, encased by it.
And obviously, I mean, what you didn't get to see was obviously in the caves venue next door to us. There's the foundation room. That's got remains of an old house in it that was just basically built over. Well, again, though, when you came out of vaults, that's the old courtyard and the mortuary. That's still, they kind of enveloped it with the bridge, so to what's left. So again, it's kind of like the whole Mary King's Close thing, just a segue to Mary King's, which again, that's exactly what they've done with Mary King's, all the stories about people being bricked up alive and they built over it, to stop the plague coming in. It's utter garbage. Mary King's was demolished to make way for the Royal Exchange building. The tenements were falling down. They had to clear them. But what we did is we just leveled it so we didn't have to build the new foundations for the city chambers. And we used the existing bottoms of the closes as foundations to build the new building on top. That was when these streets became covered. Nobody, this is a good 120 odd years after the plague left. We're not talking, a few days after it. We're talking 120 years later. The buildings were falling down. They should have been condemned. But again, people get mixed up, or not mixed up, but they'll tell you that plague victims were in the vaults and things. And it's like, the last plague to leave Edinburgh was 1645. That was the last bubonic plague. That was the last major plague we had. The bridge wasn't built till 1788. So how were plague victims kept in the vaults? They weren't even built. They weren't even talked about. So again, this is and how that it's all connected. This again, utter garbage. People, I mean, you can find this out even on Google. Wikipedia will tell you that the bridge was not there during the plague. That's how easy it is to find this information out.
I just think, suppose, sorry to interrupt, I just kind of like suppose it kind of like the plague thing kind of fits the whole sort of like dark, dank, hidden type of thing, kept away. It just kind of, people need something to hang it on, and it's just been the vaults, or it's been Mary King's Close, So
well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, for a long time,
makes a good story.
Mary King's. It is. It makes a good story, but again, it takes away from the actual accurate. Mary King's was hit like every other close in Edinburgh. 60% of Edinburgh's population caught the bubonic plague, the Black Death, in less than 3 weeks. you know, this, if you go back again, this is available archive. You go to the city archives, you can read through the expenditures for the city for 1645, and it shows you what the people were taking, like food-wise and drink-wise, and it explains it all. It breaks it down. This is how they knew. I mean, obviously, the difference between a wine, I'm just going to do the difference between a wine and a close, and maybe somebody listening that doesn't know the difference between, you know, in Edinburgh, we've got wines and we've got closes. A wind is a thoroughfare. It's a road that was open at all times for horse and carts. That was a wind. You know, it winds through to access two different roads. A close could be enclosed at night, basically by gates at either side, for security and for other things. So that's why it got, a lot of people tell you that a close is called a close because they were really narrow. No, they could be enclosed. So the gates were locked, like they were locked every night, before the plague, during the plague, and then after the plague. The white flag was the thing that went out to say plague is here. That was when they knew the plague had hit. So what they would do is they would take them food, they would take them drink, they would put it outside the close. So somebody from inside would come out to collect the food and take it into the people in the close. When they stopped collecting the food, that was when they knew they could send the foulest clangers in, the cleaners, basically the body retrievers, to get the bodies out. Mary King's Close was no different to any other close in the Royal Mile. People were not bricked up alive. Mary King's Close now tell you this themselves as well on the tour, that that's just myth. And again, it's done by old fishwives' tales. You know, if you don't behave, you're getting locked in there like the plague victims, you wee shite. You know, it's grannies telling them, of course, this kid grows up, oh, there was people bricked up there, my granny told me. You know, and just, you know, it grows arms lengths. But no, it's good that Mary King's Close now tell people, no, that never happened. There was a system in effect, and that system was the same for any street on the Royal Mile and beyond that was hit by the Black Death.
I suppose it's just never let the packs get in the way of a good ghost story. You know?
Yeah.
That's it.
There was a picture shown just before we move on, just last thing. I don't know if you remember, it was a drone.
Yeah.
The bridge and a street, and they claimed this was the vaults. What exactly was that picture? If you remember.
That one, I don't know where it is, but that's been thrown up before. It is under, if you do a search on Google for Edinburgh Southbridge vaults, that image comes up. It's like an old underground train station or something. It's got like loads of arches. I can 100% guarantee you that is not part of any part of Southbridge vaults in Edinburgh. It looks like it's down in London or something like that, or it's an underground old Victorian network of rails or something like that, or an old tube station or something. It's certainly nothing to do with Edinburgh, but it is in a search for Edinburgh Southbridge. It does come up because it's been brought up before by a researcher for a documentary who was wanting to know where that section in Edinburgh was, and again I had to tell them it's nothing to do with Edinburgh.
Really? Just, I want to jump back to Greyfriars briefly, just for two things I forgot about, if that's all right. We all know Greyfriars, the amount of bodies there, and after, you know, kind of heavy weather, bones, you know, fragments of bones and that, but you found a wee collection as well yourself.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we handed them. Obviously, the office is in Greyfriars, so people do hand them to the guides. Obviously, there's strict protocol to follow when
a picture up of a full skeleton.
Yeah, no. And that photograph, yeah, no, it's definitely not Greyfriars. That photograph has come from when they were digging for the tramworks in Leith, when they discovered an old graveyard under the road surface. They were putting the tram lines in. They found loads of skeletons. It was in the news. It was national news. They found loads of skeletons. It's been a long time since there's been one like that found in Greyfriars. Obviously, it's fragments that come up to the ground, but no, there has been no digging in Greyfriars, you know, to find something like that. And why would they be digging a big hole like that in Greyfriars anyway? You know, and be surprised when they found the skeleton. No, that's from Leith Tramworks.
I've seen the picture, and I thought, I know there's bones, bits and pieces. Jamie showed us
like that.
Some as well, but no like that. The other thing with Greyfriars is something that runs practically right through it. The Flodden Wall. Now, this show
the city boundary, yeah.
They wondered if it still existed, and it went as high as the walls of Edinburgh Castle. what's your thoughts on that one? I mean, we've seen the flood wall with, putting photographs.
Yeah, again, I mean, when people are trying to, do one of these live things and they're passing off information, and then you come out to something like this where, one of them says, well, I didn't even realise that there was a wall in Edinburgh. When in fact, there was three walls. There was the King's Wall, the Telfer Wall, and the Flodden Wall. Remnants, well, there's still some of the Telfer Wall as well. Basically, Edinburgh was a walled-in city. You should know that if you do research about Edinburgh and the history of Edinburgh. It'll tell you it's a walled-in city, like York and things like that. The biggest part, I believe, the Flodden Wall was 27 feet high at one point. That was the highest it went. But that was a city boundary, and yeah, there is lots of it left still, and then on the ground where the bits aren't, there's markings on the ground at Forest Road, where the wall went right through Bristol Square. Again, any map, if you're researching Edinburgh, why are you not looking at old maps? You would then see the different walls, and the boundaries of the city. I mean, in the same video, they actually showed an old map of Edinburgh when they were explaining Greyfriars. Well, talking about Greyfriars. That map has the Flodden Wall on it. That is the boundary wall for the city. So how that was missed, again, it's just poor research.
It's when they said I need to try and find out if any still exists, and I'm watching this and you feel like screaming. I was watching your voice. There's a big bloody bit. It runs right through the middle of Greyfriars practically, and it's got a clear sign up says Flodden Wall. And it just really, I don't know very much. It really escaped me when we need to try and find out if it still exists.
But it just invalidates anything else they have to say, though, and that's the thing. It invalidates. If you're going to say it, be prepared for the backlash. But I was just a bit miffed when I went on to the live. Well, I went onto the video on YouTube and I tried to, set a few things straight, give them information, and my comments were deleted. I mean, I wasn't aggressive. It wasn't a case of me going blah 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 blah. I went and said, look, there's a few things here I want to point out to you, and no, just as usual, comments were deleted. So that shows you right there. So that's, in my opinion, that shots fired.
Why do that? I mean, if you've done a live and you've got some bits and pieces wrong, and somebody's commenting to help you out and correct you and say, look, this is what actually happened or whatever, you reply back saying, thanks very much. Didn't know that. We've obviously got it wrong. Yeah. Whatever. You don't just go, right, delete, get rid of that. Don't want that comment up. It's just, you just don't do it. It's but the Flodden Wall, that got me when they say the height of the castle, which is 700-800 feet, something, I don't know.
750 feet off street.
Quite a height, so you can imagine having a Flodden Wall.
It's bigger than the pyramids.
It's like Game of Thrones stuff,
It's but I know you're kind of pushed for time, so just want to get another couple of things. Now this is a story we believed for quite some time until we actually spoke to yourself about it. The tunnel that supposedly runs down the Mile.
Yeah.
With it's either a drummer boy or bagpipes.
Yeah. Depending on who's telling the story. It's usually a drummer or a piper, depending on who it is. Yeah. I mean, no. Not only have we been digging for years in the Royal Mile, we went out about 30 feet down in the Royal Mile for various different things, electrical cables, sewer pipes, they've yet to find a tunnel. It's not been found yet, but again, with the makeup of Edinburgh with the crag and tail rock formation on dolerite rock, it's solid to build on. It's absolutely solid. But if you were to tunnel into it from the side, it starts slating off and it crumbles and slates. It comes off in thin slices. You cannot tunnel into it without causing damage above. So, no, that I don't believe we would have found it by now. We would have found tunnels by now if there was, connecting from. I mean, it's a great theory. I mean, it's a great idea how, that they, you could run. But again, I mean, if there was any danger to the monarch at that time, they would be held in the castle. They wouldn't, the King's Guard and stuff, they would get them up there before there was any trouble. They would know what was going to happen. So there was no need for secret escape tunnels under the Royal Mile running from the castle to Holyrood and vice versa. There was no reason for them. It was too long. It'd be too dangerous because somebody else would find it and set an ambush. Like Falkland Palace and stuff. They had the tunnels, escape tunnels that was found, and it was actually, it was what led to the death. So, we would have found them by now.
But the last thing I want to come to, I don't know if the panel's got any other ones, but obviously in Greyfriars there's 2 mortuaries, which is to prevent just all grave robbers basically. But 2 of the most famous figures to come out of Edinburgh that were associated with grave robbing and stuff were Burke and Hare.
Yeah. The two big willies.
I'm just coming on to the questions about. Obviously, we all know the story of Burke and Hare. 2 Irishmen came to Edinburgh, blah blah blah. They never dug up a grave. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely correct. They never once even attempted to dig a body out of the ground. It was far too much like hard work for them. They were looking for there were a couple of lazy bastards, basically. They were drunk. They wanted a quiet life where they could just get money and drink. That was what they were interested in. So much so, I think, the first victim, well, I can't call him a victim, the first person they took to Dr. Knox's, assistant was Donald, an old soldier who passed away. He was an old soldier. He passed away and he owed them 4 shillings in rent. 4 shillings in rent to William Hare, who owned the lodging house with his wife in Tanner's Close in Edinburgh. He wanted his 4 shillings. Don't let death stand in the way of somebody owning money. There was always ways. You can either speak to their friends or their family. He tried to find somebody, because Donald passed away in his sleep. So he tried to find one of the family members or friends who knew him. And he spent a whole day doing it. You got to remember, again, no refrigeration unit. This body is getting slowly and slowly, starting to smell. Rigor mortis setting in. So, he was strapped for it. So he thought, right, I'll try and sell some of his stuff. If I get 4 shillings for his stuff, then we'll worry about the body later, No, his stuff wasn't really worth that much. He was an old man. He was only so. What the hell did I do? So he decides he'd heard about this Dr. Knox down at Surgeon Square, who would pay if you wanted to donate a body of a relative you couldn't afford a funeral for, or you wanted to, donate it to medical research. So he thought, right, if I get 4 shillings for the body, then I'm happy. Good stuff. So he got his friend, William Burke. He decided to get his friend in. He said, right, come on, help me down here. So they took him down to the assistant, not John Knox at all, Dr. Robert Knox, John Knox. My God, I put myself back 200 years. Yeah, John Knox was in it. Yeah. Go research. I need to go research. Robert Knox. He took him down to Robert Knox's assistant, and I honestly believe the money they got in the envelope, if it hadn't have been as much as it was, I don't think they would have continued. I think they would have just went back to getting drunk and beating their wives up and, having fights with each other. The fact it was 10 Scots pounds, that was basically the nail in the coffin, excuse the pun. That was what made them then realise, wow, this is easy money. All we need to do is take a body to this guy and he gives us 10 Scots pounds. 10 Scots pounds was about a year's wage for hard labour. That was the most money they had ever seen in their life. And that was the pivotal moment that they decided, well, let's just get people who are not going to miss people and we're going to get rid of them and we're going to take them. I mean, a couple of their victims, honestly, that they'd taken down there, if they'd done CPR at the Surgeon Square, they could have actually brought them back to life. They were that fresh. They were still warm, so yeah, if they'd only got 4 shillings, they would have done something else and just blended back into the crowd. But because, that was what it was. They saw that money and they thought, this is easy.
Tenor, this is what we are going to do. So, I mean, they did say that we used to wait outside a pub with a big club. Is that right? Pub.
They went clubbing every weekend.
Whack a guy, a drunk guy over the head, and that was him. He was off.
No. To this day, if you are murdered in a certain way by suffocation, by 2 fingers over the nose and a thumb under the chin, that's called, in legal terms, in a court of law, that is burking. That comes from that. That is a legal term for it, for that form of suffocation, is burking. That is how they got rid of their victims. One of them, they would get you so drunk you couldn't stand up. They would knock you down. One of them would be on your feet. The other one would be on your chest, pushing your chest down, because they were quite stout men, pushing your chest down with 2 fingers over the nose, thumb under the chin, so you couldn't breathe. That was how they suffocated you. And that is called burking. They didn't hit people over the head, because if they hit people over the head, there'd be a mark, there'd be a bruise, there'd be a caved-in skull. Too many questions. Even if the body was, you know, if there was damage or there was bruising around the face or the neck, you know, that would still raise questions. The doctors probably wouldn't take it, because that's obviously a murder. They knew what they were doing, but there was no marks, no obvious signs of any struggles. That's how they got away with so many, 16 that we know of.
It's 2 seconds. Here's one for Craig. Take note, Mr. Dawson. One story. This.
I was thinking that, and I was thinking that.
But she said it on a live, so she's kind of incriminated herself. One of the other things it says was after 40 victims, the authorities started to take notice. Now, as far as I know, it was it not about 16, 17 victims?
16. William Burke, when they were caught, William Burke admitted 16. 16 murders. If you know, he knew he was going to hang. William Hare obviously told the same story. He gave the same roundabout number in his statement to the police. Obviously, William Hare got King's evidence. He got let off. He was going to hang, so why would he keep? You know, he had nothing to hide. If he was going to go for it, yeah, sure, I killed fucking 47 people. Yeah. You know, he had nothing to hide. So why just say, yeah, I was only 16? Didn't matter whether it was 42 or 3. He was going to hang for it. So, you know, no. Speculation, people, because he never said. So we could never, ever know. Again, though, another book that I wanted to pull up. Again, everything you need to know about William Burke and William Hare, again, is found in a book. One of the books I've got, and this is, you know, easy to find. It's online. You can get it in digital format too. It's so simple.
You can easily find it online, William Roughhead.
Yeah. This is all you need. It's all the information. So you don't come out with stuff like, yeah, they used to club their victims to death.
And
you know, it's basic research. It's not difficult.
They said when they were executed, but we all know, you know, that it was just Burke that was executed.
Yep, William Burke hanged. He took evidence. Basically, the police had already been sort of caught onto it. It wasn't until the last victim, when there was an eyewitness, because they didn't have time to get rid of the body, and the body was found in Hare's lodging house. So they went to the police. Although they'd moved it by the time the police arrived, they knew that they were both in on it, but they didn't know, you know, which one. They weren't about to talk about each other. So basically, they got offered King's evidence, which meant if you grass on your friend, you'll get off. And unfortunately, they asked William Hare first. They claimed that said, look, William, we don't know. We know it's you, but we don't know which one has been the ringleader in all this. So if you tell us what we want to know, we'll make sure that you are exonerated if you give evidence against your friend. Was it him that was the ringleader? Did he do most of the murders? Sure, it was him. It was him or him. Yep, definitely. That was it. So William Burke basically he pulled the short straw without actually pulling a short straw.
So, well, you would, you know, if you're getting that kind of deal put on the table, you're going to take it.
Well, death or not death, that was the choice I had. If you got found guilty, he was hanging. So, you know.
And then, as you said, he returned to Ireland for a short time.
He went back to Ireland. Yeah, and he was hounded out of his hometown in Ireland. So he came back. Allegedly, he then went down to London, and he died on the streets as a blind beggar. Is probably the most truthful statement, although nobody knows. So
you say basically, and it's, you know, did he or didn't he? But I think nonetheless the panels get. I think we covered everything. I'm not sure. I know the three all saw the show concern. Is there anything else that I've maybe missed?
No, I don't think so. It's just, I mean, I don't think we'll ever stop it happening. I mean, as long as the internet's there, people are just going to go and read stuff. But, if you are going to put yourself in the spotlight to do a live, most people will read it and then that's it. They'll just maybe tell a friend or something if there's a conversation. But if you're going to put it out there on a live in any format, whether there's 2 viewers or 200 or 200,000 viewers, if you're going to put it on a social media site for the public to view, at least do your basic research, because you're coming out with more and more garbage. And at the end of the day, it's you that's going to look stupid. You can delete as many comments as you want. There's always going to be people watching that going, that's not true. And it's going to invalidate everything else that you say from that point, because people are just not going to take it.
Exactly. But we'll keep a wee hold of you just for a wee minute after we come off, if that's all right, Jamie. Craig or Sarah, have you got anything to add, or did we miss anything?
Not really. I'm just sort of like, I'm agreeing with Jamie in the fact that I think what's come out of this live is research. And, Scott and Sarah, we do our research. We do our, we spend hours, days, looking into things, different points of view, different internet, trying to make sure that it is correct. And it's just sometimes it's these people that just, like you say, read one article and then go on a live and then spout it and continue to kind of like distort the truth, into it. But I think it's just generally research, even if you're just kind of, doing the kind of like a live or going out ghost hunting or recording stuff, do your research and just make sure that everything's going to be correct.
No, but you get anything you want to add?
No, I think we've covered everything apart from the Harry Potter thing, but that's alive in itself.
Yeah, don't even get me stuff. Harry Potter.
Another fan. No offence to anybody who is, or to J.K. Rowling, fantastic, but it's just doesn't float my dinghy, I'm afraid. Yeah, no offence. As I say, Dennis is saying need to get back up, Jamie Corstorphine, if I catch up. Been a long time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. Yeah.
Always.
I used to do many investigations with Dennis back in the day. Yeah.
We'll try to get him out with us.
For years.
He is quite spot on. We will get him out with us. He lives no far from us.
Ask him about Daisy the cow.
Daisy the cow.
Daisy the cow. He will remember Daisy the cow.
I never actually write anything down on lies, but I'm going to write that down because I'll need to find it. Thanks for that.
We called him Daisy Des for a long time.
Good. I will find out about that one. So we'll disappeared.
Moo, yeah, exactly. Moo.
Folks, I just want to say before we wind up, massive thanks to Jamie, obviously, and to Sarah and Craig. But massive thanks to Jamie for coming on and setting the record straight.
You're welcome.
Basically, anybody disagrees with anything that's been said tonight, feel free to contact us. The thing is, Jamie can back it up 2,000%. We booked, whatever. This was not meant against anybody. We watched a particular show, and as you say, the details were kind of out of whack, and we're not trying to be crusaders or sod all, but we just felt, it deserves to be told right. Basically,
and it's just basic information. It should be common sense. If you're going to do something like that, then just please do proper research. Don't just read one thing and then go put that out, because 99% of the time you're going to be wrong.
And see, there's no better man to put Edinburgh right tonight than. So look up Sight of the Dead tours are situated just as you go in the gate of Greyfriars on the right-hand side. That's where the office is. But you can find them online as well. And it is a genuine tour. I know there's a lot of tours in Edinburgh. And as Jamie said earlier on, I've listened to a few of them as well. And it sounds like it's scripted. You know, it's the same thing over and over. But if you do one of Jamie's tours, you'll see a massive difference between, no offence to the other tour companies, but you will see a massive difference. So definitely give them a City of the Dead tours in Edinburgh. Well worth a look. But we will be seeing Jamie again. Don't worry, to get another idea, but that's a final idea. So take care for now, folks. We're back on Sunday with Karen Frey for Spiritually Speaking. So until then, take care and thanks for joining. And massive thanks again. He's over there, Mr. Corstorphine, down there. And by the way, he's actually trimmed. We were with him Saturday, and he was at a Yeti. I was like, down to there.
Yeah.
But I think he shaved especially for tonight's show, which is great. Actually, she's lips moving now. Saturday was just a bunch of hair. And thanks again, and we'll see you on Sunday. Take care. Bye. Bye.